The screams carried across the frozen plains like ghosts seeking vengeance, and Owen Garrett knew someone was dying out there in the white hell that December had unleashed upon the Wyoming territory. He stood on his porch with a Winchester in his weathered hands, squinting against the horizontal snow that stung his face like tiny needles. The year was 1883, and winter had descended upon his ranch with all the fury of a spurned lover. For 3 weeks now, the blizzard had raged without mercy, burying the land under drifts that reached the eaves of his barn. Owen had weathered worse storms in his 32 years, but never alone, and never with such a hollow ache in his chest that made even breathing feel like a chore. The screaming came again, closer now, and Owen realized it was not screams at all but rather the desperate cries of a woman calling for help. Without another thought, he wrapped his thick buffalo coat tighter around his frame, pulled his hat down low, and stepped into the blinding white. The wind immediately tried to knock him sideways, but Owen had legs like tree trunks and a stubbornness that matched the Wyoming landscape itself. He tied a rope from his porch to his belt, a precaution his father had taught him years ago when getting lost in a whiteout meant certain death. The voice grew louder as he pushed forward, each step sinking him knee-deep into fresh powder. His beard had already crusted with ice, and his lungs burned from the cold air, but Owen pressed on. Then he saw her, a dark shape against the endless white, stumbling forward with arms outstretched like a sleepwalker. She fell face first into a drift, and Owen surged forward with renewed urgency. When he reached her, he saw a young woman dressed in clothing far too thin for this brutal weather. Her lips had turned blue, and her dark hair was matted with ice and snow. She could not have been more than 22 or 23 years old, and she was barely conscious. Owen scooped her up in his arms, surprised by how light she felt, and followed his rope back toward the house. The wind fought him every step, trying to wrench his prize away, but Owen had hauled calves through blizzards and wrestled steers twice his weight. He would not be denied. Inside, the warmth of his cabin hit them like a wall. Owen kicked the door shut behind him and carried the woman to the hearth, where a fire crackled and popped. He laid her on the thick bearskin rug and quickly began removing her frozen outer garments. Her fingers were white with frostbite, and her breathing came in shallow gasps that sent panic shooting through his chest. Owen had lived alone for 2 years since his younger brother had headed to California seeking gold, and before that, it had been just the two of them after their parents passed from fever. He was not accustomed to caring for anyone but himself and his livestock, yet instinct took over. He wrapped her in wool blankets from his bed and gently rubbed her hands and feet to restore circulation. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing irises the color of honey, and she mumbled something incoherent before losing consciousness again. Owen heated water on his stove and carefully cleaned her face, revealing delicate features now marred by the angry red of windburn. She was beautiful in a way that made his breath catch, but more than that, she looked vulnerable and utterly lost. For the next several hours, Owen tended to her with a dedication that surprised him. He had grown accustomed to his solitary existence, filling his days with ranch work and his nights with books by lamplight. The silence had become a companion rather than an enemy, or so he had told himself. Now, with this mysterious woman breathing softly by his fire, the cabin felt different, charged with a presence he had not realized he craved. As darkness fell, and the blizzard continued its assault outside, the woman's eyes opened fully for the first time. She looked around in confusion before her gaze settled on Owen, who sat in his wooden chair a few feet away, watching over her like a guardian. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse and weak, but there was strength underneath, like steel wrapped in velvet. "My ranch about 15 miles north of Cimarron," Owen said, his own voice rough from disuse. He did not speak much these days, having no one to talk to except his horses. "Found you in the blizzard. You are lucky to be alive." The woman tried to sit up, but Owen gently pressed her back down. "Easy now. You have got frostbite on your fingers and toes. Nothing too serious if we are careful, but you need to rest." "My stagecoach," she said suddenly, her eyes widening with memory. "We were heading from Cheyenne to Cimarron when we got caught in the storm. The horses panicked and we overturned. I tried to find help, but I got so turned around in all the white, I could not even tell which way was up." "Anyone else with you?" Owen asked, already dreading the answer. The woman's face crumpled and tears spilled down her cheeks. "The driver, Mr. Henderson. He told me to run, said he would be right behind me, but when I looked back, I could not see him anymore. There was just the snow and the wind and the cold." Owen nodded grimly. "I will look for him come morning if the storm breaks." "But I have to be honest with you, madam. If he has been out there for hours, chances are slim." "I know," she whispered, fresh tears flowing. "I tried to tell him to stay with the coach, but he insisted we had to find shelter. Oh God, this is my fault." "It is not your fault," Owen said firmly. "This is nature, and she does not care about fault or innocence. She just is." The woman wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, and Owen noticed the lack of a wedding ring. "My name is Juliet Morrison. I was coming to Cimarron to teach at the new school. The territorial governor hired several teachers from back east, and I volunteered because I wanted adventure. I wanted to see the Wild West everyone talks about." She laughed bitterly. "Well, I certainly got more than I bargained for." "Owen Garrett," he replied, extending his hand. She took it, her grip surprisingly firm despite her ordeal. "And for what it is worth, Miss Morrison, Wyoming is not always this inhospitable. Come spring, this land transforms into something close to paradise. Rolling grasslands as far as the eye can see, wildflowers in every color, and skies so blue they hurt your eyes." "You love it here," Juliet said, and it was not a question. "I do," Owen admitted. "Born and raised on this ranch. My father built the original cabin with his own hands back in '68, right after the war. He had seen enough of killing and wanted to build something instead. This land gave him that chance." Juliet closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her, but Owen could see her fighting it. "How long do you think we will be snowed in?" Owen glanced toward the window where snow pressed against the glass like a living thing. "Storm like this could be days, could be a week. I have got provisions enough for 2 months if we are careful. Plenty of firewood stacked in the shed that connects to the house. We will not starve or freeze, I promise you that." "I do not want to be a burden," Juliet said softly. "You are not a burden," Owen replied, and he meant it. Already in just these few hours, something had shifted inside him. The loneliness he had buried under routine and work had surfaced again, and he realized how much he had missed simple human connection. "Now sleep. You have been through hell today, and your body needs rest to heal." Juliet nodded and let her eyes close. Within moments, her breathing deepened into sleep. Owen added another log to the fire and settled into his chair, content to watch over her through the night. Outside, the wind howled like all the demons of the underworld, but inside, there was warmth and life and, for the first time in a very long time, hope. The next morning arrived with no improvement in the weather. If anything, the blizzard had intensified, and when Owen peered outside, he could barely see 10 feet beyond his porch. There would be no search for Mr. Henderson today, a fact that sat heavy in his gut. The man was almost certainly dead, frozen solid somewhere out there in the white expanse, but Owen knew his duty would require him to search once conditions allowed. For now, Survival was the priority. Juliet woke slowly, confusion crossing her face before memory returned. Owen had been up for hours, as was his habit, and had already prepared a simple breakfast of bacon, eggs, and fresh biscuits. The smell filled the cabin, rich and inviting. "I must look a fright," Juliet said, touching her tangled hair self-consciously. "You look alive, which is considerably better than the alternative," Owen said, bringing her a plate. "How are the fingers and toes?" Juliet wiggled them experimentally. "Painful, but they move. I suppose that is good. It is very good. Means the damage is not permanent. You will be tender for a while, but you will heal." Owen handed her a fork and watched as she took her first bite. Her eyes widened in surprise. "This is delicious." "You can cook," Owen shrugged. "When you live alone, you learn or you starve." "My mother taught me the basics before she passed, and I have had years to practice. Not much else to do during the long winters except raid and experiment in the kitchen." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Juliet spoke again. "Tell me about your ranch. What do you raise?" "Cattle mostly," Owen said, settling into his chair with his own plate. "Have about 300 head scattered across 2,000 acres. Also keep horses, a dozen or so at any given time. Sell them to the army post at Fort Laramie when they need remounts. It is a good life, honest work." "Lonely sometimes, but honest." "Do you have family, a wife?" Juliet asked, then immediately blushed. "I apologize, that was too forward." "No wife," Owen said, not taking offense. "Was engaged once, about 5 years back, to a woman named Sarah. She was from Cimarron, daughter of the banker. Pretty girl, sweet disposition. But when it came time to actually move out here and start our life together, she realized she could not do it. The isolation was too much for her. She broke it off and married a shopkeeper instead, probably for the best. I need someone who loves this land like I do, not someone who sees it as a prison." "I am sorry," Juliet said softly. "Do not be. It stung at the time, but I have made my peace with it. What about you? What brings a young teacher from back east all the way to the Wyoming territory?" Juliet set down her fork and stared into the fire. "I grew up in Boston, daughter of a textile merchant. Comfortable life, plenty of suitors, a clear path laid out for me. Marry well, have children, host parties, grow old, and die never having done anything remarkable. I tried, I really did, but I felt like I was suffocating. Then I saw the advertisement seeking teachers for the territories, and it was like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. My parents were furious when I accepted, and my mother swore I would come crawling back within a year. But I would rather die out here trying something real than live another day as an ornament in someone's parlor." Owen found himself grinning despite the grim circumstances. "That takes courage. Most people do not have the strength to walk away from comfort and security." "Or perhaps I am just foolish," Juliet said, but she smiled as she said it. "There is a fine line between the two," Owen agreed, "but I prefer to think of it as courage." The days that followed fell into a natural rhythm. The blizzard showed no signs of abating, and Owen estimated they had already received close to 3 feet of new snow, with more falling constantly. The world beyond the cabin might as well have ceased to exist. They were completely cut off, 2 souls adrift in an ocean of white. Owen taught Juliet the routines of ranch life as much as conditions allowed. He showed her how to properly tend the fire, how to melt snow for water, how to ration supplies without feeling deprived. In return, Juliet brought a lightness to the cabin that Owen had not realized was missing. She had a sharp wit and a quick laugh, and she was endlessly curious about everything. "Why did you name the ranch the Double G?" she asked one afternoon as they sat by the fire, Owen mending a bridle while Juliet attempted to knit a scarf from some yarn she had found in a trunk. Double G for Garrett, Owen explained. My father wanted something simple. He said in this life a man does not need a fancy name, just an honest one that people can remember. It suits you, Juliet said, struggling with the knitting needles. How do people do this? It is like trying to teach snakes to dance. Owen laughed, a sound that felt foreign in his own chest. My mother could knit anything. Sweaters, blankets, socks. She tried to teach my brother and me, but we were hopeless, drove her to distraction. What happened to your brother? You said he went to California. Owen's expression sobered. Thomas. He was 5 years younger than me, always had big dreams that this ranch could not contain. When gold was discovered in California, he got the fever bad. I tried to talk him out of it, told him the odds of striking it rich were slim, but he would not listen. That was 3 years ago. Got one letter from him about 6 months after he left, saying he had made it to Sacramento and was heading into the mountains. Nothing since. Do you think he is still alive? Juliet asked gently. I do not know, Owen admitted. Some days I am sure he is, that he is just too caught up in his quest to write. Other days I think I would feel it if he was gone, like something essential would be missing from the world. But I do not feel that, so I choose to believe he is alive and simply being Thomas, too stubborn to admit he was wrong. Juliet reached over and squeezed his hand. The gesture was simple but profound, and Owen felt warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the fire. I am sure he is alive, and I am sure he thinks of you often. Thank you, Owen said, and he meant it. That night, as the wind rattled the windows and the fire burned low, they sat together on the bearskin rug, shoulders touching, sharing stories of their lives. Juliet told him about growing up in a crowded city, where you were never truly alone but often lonely, where the air smelled of coal smoke and sewage, where the stars were hidden by buildings and smog. Owen told her about watching sunrises from horseback, about the way the land changed with the seasons, about the fierce pride he felt being a steward of this wild place. I think I understand why Sarah could not do it, Juliet said quietly. This life requires a strength most people do not have. But I also think she was a fool for letting you go. Owen turned to look at her, and in the firelight, Juliet was breathtaking. Her hair, now clean and brushed, fell in soft waves around her face. Her eyes held depths he was only beginning to explore, and her lips were slightly parted as if waiting for something. Juliet, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I am glad you were caught in this blizzard. I know that makes me a terrible person, but I cannot help feeling like fate brought you here for a reason. I am glad too, she admitted. I should be terrified, stranded in a blizzard with a man I barely know, but I feel safer here than I ever did in Boston. You have a good heart, Owen Garrett. It shows in everything you do. Owen reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. I am going to kiss you now, if that is all right. I would be disappointed if you did not, Juliet said, and then his lips were on hers, and the world outside ceased to matter entirely. The kiss started gentle, tentative, two people discovering each other for the first time. But it quickly deepened, years of loneliness on Owen's part and months of uncertainty on Juliet's, all pouring into that single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, and Owen rested his forehead against hers. I have never felt this way before, he confessed. Not even with Sarah. This is different, deeper somehow. I know, Juliet whispered. I feel it too, like I've been walking through fog my whole life and suddenly everything is clear. They made love that night on the bearskin rug with the fire painting their skin in shades of amber and gold. It was tender and passionate and perfect in the way that first times rarely are, but somehow they fit together like pieces of a puzzle that had always been meant to join. Afterward, they lay tangled in blankets, listening to the storm rage outside while their own storm had finally calmed into something peaceful and right. "What happens when the blizzard ends?" Juliet asked, tracing patterns on Owen's chest. "I suppose you will need to get to Cimarron," Owen said, though the thought of losing her already felt like a knife to his gut. "The school will be expecting you. And if I do not want to go—" Owen propped himself up on one elbow to look at her properly. "What are you saying?" Juliet met his gaze steadily. "I am saying that I came to Wyoming looking for something real, something meaningful. I think I have found it here with you. I know it is fast, I know it is crazy, but I also know what I feel is true. I want to stay, Owen. I want to build a life here with you if you will have me." Owen's heart hammered against his ribs. "Juliet Morrison, I would have you every day for the rest of my life if you are serious about this, but I need you to understand what you would be choosing. This ranch is miles from town. Winter is brutal. The work is hard and never ends. You would be giving up any chance at the life you could have had." "I do not want that life," Juliet said firmly. "I want this one. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to learn how to run this ranch and make it ours together. I want to watch the seasons change and raise children who know the value of honest work and open spaces. I want you, Owen, all of you, for as long as we both live." "Then you have me," Owen said, pulling her close. "God help me, you have had me since the moment I pulled you from that snow." They held each other as the fire burned down to embers, and for the first time since his parents had passed, Owen felt truly whole. The loneliness that had been his constant companion had vanished, replaced by a love so fierce and sudden it took his breath away. The blizzard finally broke 6 days after Owen had found Juliet. The sun emerged like a benediction, bathing the transformed landscape in brilliant light. Snow covered everything as far as the eye could see, pristine and untouched, except for the thin column of smoke rising from Owen's chimney. Owen's first duty was grim but necessary. He and Juliet bundled up in layers and set out to search for Mr. Henderson and the wrecked stagecoach. The going was treacherous, with drifts reaching higher than Owen's head in places, but he had a rough idea of the direction Juliet had come from based on her description. They found the stagecoach about 3 miles south of the ranch, nearly buried and lying on its side like a dead beast. The horses were gone, either fled or buried elsewhere, but Mr. Henderson they found frozen solid about 50 yards from the wreck. He had tried to follow Juliet, that much was clear, but had become disoriented and wandered in the wrong direction. Owen said a prayer over the man's body while Juliet wept quietly beside him. "We will have to leave him here until the ground thaws," Owen said gently. "I will mark the spot and report it to the sheriff in Cimarron. He will have to notify Henderson's family." "He was a good man," Juliet said. "He told me about his grandchildren, showed me their pictures. They were his whole world." "Then we will make sure they know he died trying to save you," Owen promised. "That he was a hero." They returned to the ranch in somber silence, the joy of the morning muted by the reminder of how close Juliet had come to sharing Henderson's fate. That afternoon, Owen saddled his strongest horse and prepared for the journey to Cimarron. "I am coming with you," Juliet insisted. "It is a hard ride and you are still recovering," Owen protested. "I am fine and I am coming. We are partners now, remember? We do things together." Owen could not argue with that logic, so he saddled a second horse, a gentle mare named Daisy, and they set out together. The journey took most of the day, their horses struggling through deep snow, but eventually the buildings of Cimarron came into view. The town was small but bustling with activity. Cowboys and ranchers, miners and merchants, all going about their business under the endless Wyoming sky. Owen led them straight to the sheriff's office, a small wooden building with bars on the windows. Sheriff Robert Caldwell was a bear of a man with a gray beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened to their story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a piece of paper. "Henderson was a good man," Caldwell said when they finished. "Drove that route for near 15 years without incident. Damn shame. I will send men out to retrieve the body soon as the trails are passable. As for you, Miss Morrison, the school board has been worried sick. They assumed the worst when you never arrived." "I need to speak with them," Juliet said. "There has been a change in my plans." Owen felt a flash of panic. Had she changed her mind? Did the harsh reality of Henderson's death make her reconsider her choice? But Juliet reached over and took his hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "I will not be taking the teaching position. I am staying at the Double G Ranch with Mr. Garrett. We are to be married." Sheriff Caldwell's eyebrows shot up, and a slow smile spread across his weathered face. "Well now, that is news. Owen Garrett, I will be damned. Thought you were committed to bachelorhood." "So did I," Owen admitted, grinning like a fool. "Then the blizzard sent me an angel, and I was not stupid enough to let her go." "Congratulations to you both," Caldwell said warmly. "Though the school board will be disappointed. Teachers are hard to come by out here." "I can still teach," Juliet said thoughtfully. "Perhaps not at the school in town, but there must be ranch children in the area who need education. I could tutor them, maybe even start a small school out at the ranch during the winter months when travel is easier." "That is a fine idea," Caldwell agreed. "Lord knows these frontier kids need all the learning they can get. Most of them can barely read." They left the sheriff's office and made their way to the general store to purchase supplies. The proprietor, a thin man named William Foster, greeted Owen warmly and eyed Juliet with open curiosity. "This is Juliet Morrison, my fiancée," Owen said proudly, and he enjoyed watching Foster's jaw drop. "Well, I will be," Foster said, recovering quickly. "Pleased to meet you, miss. Owen here is one of our best customers, honest as they come. You have got yourself a good man." "I know," Juliet said, smiling up at Owen in a way that made his heart skip. They spent the next hour gathering supplies: flour, sugar, coffee, salted meat, canned goods, fabric for new clothes, needles and thread, lamp oil, and a dozen other necessities. Owen also purchased a delicate gold ring from the small selection Foster kept locked in a case behind the counter. It was simple but elegant, and when he slipped it onto Juliet's finger, it fit perfectly. "We will have a proper ceremony when the circuit preacher comes through," Owen said. "But for now, consider yourself Mrs. Garrett in my eyes." "Mrs. Garrett," Juliet repeated, testing the sound of it. "I like that very much." They stayed in Cimarron only long enough to complete their business, then headed back to the ranch, eager to return to their sanctuary. The ride was easier this time, their horses following the trail they had broken earlier, and they arrived home just as the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. That night, they celebrated with a simple meal and a bottle of whiskey Owen had been saving for a special occasion. They drank to new beginnings, to second chances, to the blizzard that had brought them together. "You think people will gossip?" Juliet asked as they lay in bed, her head resting on Owen's chest. "About how quickly we fell in love, probably," Owen said honestly. "But I do not care what people think. I know what I feel and I know what is real. That is enough for me." "It is enough for me too," Juliet agreed. "Besides, out here, does it really matter? We make our own rules, live by our own standards. That is the beauty of the frontier." Winter continued its grip on the land, but the worst of the storms had passed. Owen and Juliet spent the following weeks working together to prepare the ranch for the coming spring. Owen taught Juliet how to care for the cattle, how to identify when an animal was sick, how to mend fences and repair tack. Juliet proved to be a quick study, unafraid of hard work or getting her hands dirty. In turn, Juliet brought her own skills to the ranch. She reorganized Owen's chaotic record-keeping system, creating neat ledgers that tracked expenses and income. She sewed new curtains for the windows and braided rugs from old fabric scraps, making the cabin feel more like a home. She cooked meals that went beyond Owen's simple fare, surprising him with her creativity given their limited ingredients. But more than the practical contributions, Juliet brought joy. She sang while she worked, filling the cabin with melodies Owen had not heard since his mother's time. She asked endless questions about everything, genuinely interested in learning about the land and animals. She challenged him in ways that kept his mind sharp, debating politics and philosophy late into the night. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Juliet said, "Tell me about your dreams, Owen. What do you want for this ranch in 5 years, 10 years?" Owen considered the question carefully. "I want to expand the herd, maybe up to 500 head. I want to improve the bloodlines, produce cattle that fetch premium prices. I want to build a bigger house, something with multiple rooms for when children come along. I want to plant an orchard, apples and cherries if they will grow in this climate. I want to build something that lasts, something I can pass down to our children and their children." "Then that is what we will do," Juliet said with fierce determination. "Together, we will build something extraordinary." "What are your dreams?" Owen asked. Juliet was quiet for a moment, staring into the flames. "I want to prove my mother wrong. I want to show that a woman can thrive out here, that she can be more than just an ornament. I want to educate children and give them opportunities I never had. I want to write letters back east, telling other women that there is a different way to live if they are brave enough to reach for it. And I want to grow old with you, watching sunrises from the porch and knowing I lived a life that mattered." "You already matter," Owen said, pulling her close. "You matter more than you will ever know." The circuit preacher, a weathered man named Reverend Paul Thatcher, arrived in late February. He traveled between the scattered ranches and small towns of the territory, bringing religion to those who could not reach a proper church. Owen and Juliet were married in the cabin, with Sheriff Caldwell and his wife Martha standing as witnesses. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Juliet wore a dress she had made herself from fabric purchased in Cimarron, pale blue with white lace trim. Owen wore his best suit, freshly cleaned and pressed. When they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both lived, there was not a dry eye in the cabin. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thatcher said with a warm smile. "You may kiss your bride." Owen did so with enthusiasm, dipping Juliet dramatically and earning laughs from their small audience. When they came up for air, Martha Caldwell was dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "That was beautiful," she sniffled. "Just beautiful. You two are going to be so happy together." They celebrated with a feast that Martha had helped prepare: roasted venison and potatoes, fresh bread and pie made from preserved cherries. It was modest by Boston standards, Juliet knew, but it was rich with genuine warmth and friendship. As the sun set and their guests departed for the long ride back to town, Owen and Juliet stood on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms. "Mrs. Garrett," Owen said, savoring the words. "My wife." "My husband," Juliet replied, reaching up to kiss him. "I love you, Owen. I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I love you too," Owen said, "more than I thought possible. You have given me back something I did not even know I had lost." "What is that?" "Hope," Owen said simply. "A reason to dream beyond just surviving another season. You have given me a future worth fighting for." Spring arrived slowly. the snow melting in fits and starts, revealing the land beneath like a secret being gradually disclosed. The cattle had survived the winter in good shape, and Owen breathed a sigh of relief. Losing stock to winter kill was always a risk, but careful preparation and a bit of luck had seen them through. As the weather warmed, neighboring ranchers began stopping by, curious to meet the woman who had tamed the notoriously solitary Owen Garrett. They came bearing gifts and well wishes, and Juliet charmed them all with her warmth and genuine interest in their lives. She took careful notes on which families had children and what their educational needs might be, already planning her informal school. One of their first visitors was an older rancher named Charles Morton, who owned the spread bordering the Double G to the east. He arrived with his wife, Elizabeth, and their 15-year-old daughter, Amy. "Heard you got yourself hitched, Owen," Charles said, shaking Owen's hand vigorously. "Had to come see the woman who managed that impossible task." "Charles, Elizabeth, this is my wife, Juliet," Owen said, pride evident in his voice. "Pleased to meet you," Juliet said, shaking hands warmly. "Owen has told me about your ranch. He says you run some of the finest horses in the territory." "He flatters me," Charles said, but he looked pleased. "Though I do pride myself on my stock, you should come by sometime, take a look." "I would love that," Juliet said, then turned to Amy. "And you must be Amy. Your father tells me you are quite the rider." Amy blushed but nodded. "Yes, madam. Pa says I am better than most of the ranch hands." "I bet you are," Juliet said. "Tell me, Amy, how is your reading?" The girl's face fell. "Not so good, madam. We do not have a teacher nearby, and Ma does her best, but she never learned much herself." Juliet glanced at Owen, who nodded encouragingly. "Well, I happen to be a teacher, and I am planning to start tutoring children in the area. Would you be interested in coming to the Double G twice a week for lessons?" Amy's face lit up like the sun. "Really? Oh, that would be wonderful. Could I, Pa?" Charles looked at Juliet with gratitude. "That is mighty generous of you, Mrs. Garrett. We would be happy to pay." "Nonsense," Juliet said. "Consider it my contribution to the community. Though if you wanted to trade some of those fine horses for lessons, I would not object." Charles laughed. "You drive a hard bargain, but you have got a deal. Amy needs a good horse of her own anyway." Word spread quickly, and soon Juliet had a small class of 7 students ranging in age from 8 to 16. They came from neighboring ranches, traveling distances that would have been unthinkable back east, but that were considered reasonable in the wide, open spaces of Wyoming. Juliet taught them reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and geography, using the limited resources she had brought from Boston supplemented by materials Owen ordered from catalogs. Owen watched with admiration as Juliet threw herself into teaching. She was patient but firm, encouraging but demanding, and her students thrived under her guidance. He often paused in his work to listen to her voice drifting from the cabin, reading aloud from books or explaining mathematical concepts. "You are staring again," Juliet said one afternoon, catching him watching through the window. "Can you blame me?" Owen replied, grinning. "My wife is remarkable, and I enjoy reminding myself that she is real and not some dream conjured by a lonely man." "Very real," Juliet assured him, stepping outside and wrapping her arms around his waist. "And very much in love with you." Summer brought long days and hard work. The cattle needed to be moved to higher pastures, fences needed repair after the harsh winter, and the garden Juliet had planted required constant attention. Owen hired 2 ranch hands to help with the workload, young men named Peter and Samuel who were brothers from a struggling farm in Nebraska. They were hard workers and respectful, and they quickly became part of the extended Double G family. One evening in July, As Owen and Juliet sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, Juliet said, "Owen, I need to tell you something." Something in her tone made Owen's heart skip. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong," Juliet said, taking his hand. "Quite the opposite, actually. I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Owen felt as if the world had stopped spinning. "A baby, you are sure?" "I am sure," Juliet said, laughing at his stunned expression. "I have missed my monthly courses and I have been sick in the mornings. Martha Caldwell confirmed it when she visited last week. She is experienced with these things, having had 6 children of her own." "A baby," Owen repeated, the reality sinking in. Then he whooped with joy, jumping up and spinning Juliet around until she laughingly begged him to stop. "We are going to be parents. I am going to be a father." "Yes, you are," Juliet said, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Our baby should arrive sometime in February if Martha's calculations are correct. A winter baby, just like their mother's arrival here." Owen pulled her close, suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. "I promise you, Juliet, I will be the best father I can be. I will protect you both with my life. I will build a good world for our child to grow up in." "I know you will," Juliet said, resting her head against his chest. "You are already the best man I know. Our child is lucky to have you as a father." The news spread through the community and soon gifts began arriving. Hand-knitted baby clothes from Elizabeth Morton, a cradle carved by Charles Morton himself, blankets and toys and practical items from neighbors who understood the challenges of raising a child on the frontier. Owen was touched by the generosity, realizing that he and Juliet were no longer alone. They were part of a community, connected by shared hardships and joys. As autumn arrived and the leaves changed color, Owen began working on additions to the cabin. He wanted more room for their growing family, proper bedrooms, and a larger kitchen. Peter and Samuel helped, and slowly the structure took shape. It was hard work fitting it in around the regular ranch duties, but Owen attacked it with enthusiasm. "You are going to exhaust yourself," Juliet scolded one evening when Owen came in late, covered in sawdust and barely able to keep his eyes open. "I want everything perfect before the baby comes," Owen said, accepting the plate of food she handed him. "I want our child to have a proper home." "Our child will have love, which is more important than any building," Juliet said gently. "But I appreciate your efforts. The new rooms are beautiful and I love watching you work. You have gifted hands." Owen grinned. Among other gifts, Juliet blushed but laughed. Even pregnant and tired, she was the most beautiful thing Owen had ever seen. Her belly had begun to swell with their child, and Owen found himself constantly touching it, marveling at the life growing within. One night in October they lay in bed and Owen placed his hand on Juliet's stomach, feeling the baby kick. "There," Juliet said, guiding his hand. "Feel that? Your son or daughter saying hello." "Hello, little one," Owen said softly, speaking to Juliet's belly. "I am your father, and I cannot wait to meet you. Your mother and I have so much to show you. This beautiful land will be your inheritance, and I promise to teach you how to care for it, how to respect it." "You are going to be such a good father," Juliet said, tears streaming down her face. The pregnancy had made her emotional, prone to crying at the smallest things, but Owen found it endearing. "Are you scared?" Owen asked. "About the birth?" "Terrified," Juliet admitted. "Women die in childbirth all the time, especially out here with limited medical care, but I am also excited. I want to meet our baby, hold them, watch them grow. I suppose the fear and excitement are all mixed together." "Martha Caldwell will be here to help," Owen said. "She has delivered dozens of babies, and I will be right there with you every moment. You will not face this alone." "I know," Juliet said, squeezing his hand. That is what gives me courage, knowing you are by my side." Winter returned, though not as fiercely as the previous year. There were storms, of course, but they were manageable, and Owen found himself grateful for the timing. The new addition to the cabin was finished just in time, and they had 2 proper bedrooms now, plus a nursery painted in soft yellow. Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly, exchanging simple gifts. Owen gave Juliet a leather-bound journal for recording her thoughts and memories. Juliet gave Owen a new rifle, having scrimped and saved from her small earnings tutoring. They decorated a small pine tree Peter and Samuel had cut from the hills, using paper ornaments and strings of popcorn. "This is my favorite Christmas ever," Juliet said, curled up next to Owen by the fire. "Not because of the gifts, but because I am spending it with you, starting our family. Last year at this time I was still in Boston, feeling trapped and hopeless. Now look at me, I have everything I ever wanted." "Me too," Owen said, kissing the top of her head. "Everything and more." The baby came on a cold February night, 3 days after Owen's 33rd birthday. Juliet's labor started in the late afternoon, and Martha Caldwell was summoned immediately. She arrived with her practiced calm and took charge, sending Peter for hot water and clean towels while instructing Samuel to keep the fire going strong. Owen stayed with Juliet through it all, holding her hand as she labored, whispering encouragement when she cried out in pain. It was the longest night of his life, each of Juliet's cries cutting through him like a knife. He felt helpless, unable to do anything but be present. As dawn broke, painting the snow outside in shades of pink and gold, their son entered the world with a lusty cry that announced his presence to all of Wyoming. Martha cleaned him quickly and placed him in Juliet's arms, and Owen felt his heart expand to a size he had not known was possible. "A son," Juliet whispered, exhausted but radiant. "Owen, we have a son." "He is perfect," Owen said, his voice choked with emotion. The baby had a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air. "Absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Juliet asked. They had discussed names for months but never settled on anything definitive. Now, looking at his son, Owen knew exactly what felt right. "How about Oliver?" Owen suggested. "Oliver Thomas Garrett, after both our initials and my brother. I like to think Thomas is still out there somewhere, and it would honor his memory even if I am wrong." "Oliver Thomas Garrett," Juliet repeated, smiling down at their son. "It is perfect. Hello, Oliver. Welcome to the Double G Ranch. You are going to love it here." Martha stayed for 3 days, ensuring both mother and baby were healthy before making the long journey back to town. Oliver thrived, nursing eagerly and sleeping in fits and starts that left both parents exhausted but deliriously happy. "I did not know it was possible to love something this much," Owen confessed one night as he held Oliver, watching the baby sleep in his arms. "It is terrifying and wonderful all at once." "I know," Juliet agreed. "Every time I look at him, I think my heart might burst. He is so small, so helpless. We are responsible for this entire person, shaping who he becomes." "We will do our best," Owen said. "That is all anyone can do. Love him, teach him, give him the tools to become a good man. The rest is up to him and the world." Spring arrived with its usual transformation, the land bursting into life after the long winter sleep. Oliver grew rapidly, becoming more alert and responsive with each passing day. He had inherited his mother's honey-colored eyes and his father's strong constitution, rarely fussy and almost always smiling. Juliet returned to teaching as soon as she felt able, with Oliver sleeping in a cradle near the makeshift classroom. Her students were delighted by the new addition, and the older girls often helped entertain him when lessons allowed. Owen watched his little family with pride, amazed at how much his life had changed in just over a year. One warm afternoon in April, a lone rider approached the ranch. Owen, who was working in the corral with a young horse, looked up and felt his heart stop. The rider was thin and weathered, with a scraggly beard and clothes that had seen better days, but there was something familiar in the way he sat his horse. "Thomas," Owen called, hardly daring to believe it. The rider's head snapped up, and a huge grin split his face. "Owen, hot damn, I found you." Owen vaulted the fence and ran to his brother, pulling him from the saddle into a fierce embrace. Both men were crying unashamedly, years of worry and separation pouring out in that moment. "I thought you were dead," Owen said, pulling back to look at Thomas properly. 3 years, Thomas, 3 years without a word." "I know, and I am sorry," Thomas said, wiping at his eyes. "Things went south in California, real south. Got swindled out of my stake, spent time working in the mines just to earn enough to eat. Tried to write, but letters cost money I did not have. Finally saved enough to come home. I hope you will forgive me for being such a damn fool." "You are my brother," Owen said simply. "There is nothing to forgive. I am just glad you are alive and home." "Who is this?" Juliet asked, emerging from the cabin with Oliver in her arms. "Juliet, meet my brother Thomas," Owen said, gesturing between them. "Thomas, this is my wife Juliet and our son Oliver." Thomas's jaw dropped. "Wife." "Son, Owen, you have been busy. Last I knew you were married to this ranch and nothing else." "A lot has changed," Owen admitted, grinning. "Come inside. You look half-starved. We will feed you and catch you up on everything." They spent the evening trading stories. Thomas told them about the harsh realities of the California goldfields, the swindlers and thieves, the backbreaking work for minimal reward. Owen and Juliet told him about the blizzard that brought them together, their courtship and marriage, the birth of Oliver. "So a storm saved your life and gave Owen back his," Thomas marveled, looking at Juliet with respect. "That is some story. You are one lucky woman to have survived that blizzard." "Lucky and married to a good man who knew how to survive it," Juliet said, smiling at Owen. "I like to think fate brought us together." "I believe it," Thomas said. "This place feels different than when I left, warmer somehow, more alive. You two have built something special here." "There is room for you too," Owen said, "if you want to stay. The ranch is big enough for all of us, and I could use a partner I trust. Peter and Samuel are good hands, but they are not family." Thomas looked overwhelmed. "You would want me after I abandoned you." "You did not abandon me," Owen said firmly. "You chased a dream. It did not work out, but that does not make you a failure. You are my brother, Thomas. This is your home as much as mine. Stay." "I would like that," Thomas said quietly. "I would like that very much." And so the Double G Ranch grew to include one more. Thomas threw himself into ranch work with the fervor of a man trying to atone for lost time. He was tireless, taking on the hardest tasks without complaint. He also proved to be wonderful with Oliver, his nephew, spending hours entertaining the baby and helping Juliet when Owen was occupied with ranch duties. "Your brother is a good man," Juliet told Owen one night as they lay in bed. "He made a mistake, but he owned up to it. There is honor in that." "He always had a good heart," Owen agreed. "Just needed to figure some things out for himself. I am glad he is home." The years passed in a blur of seasons and growth. Oliver grew from baby to toddler to a sturdy little boy who followed his father and uncle around the ranch like a shadow. He learned to ride before he could read properly, sitting in front of Owen on the saddle as they checked fences and moved cattle. 2 years after Oliver's birth, Juliet gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace. The births were easier than Oliver's, and both girls were healthy and loud, announcing their presence with vigor. Owen was beside himself with joy, 3 children to carry on the legacy he and Juliet were building. Thomas met a woman named Sarah Johnson at a community dance in Cimarron. She was a widow with a small ranch of her own, practical and kind, and she saw past Thomas's rough exterior to the good man beneath. They courted for 6 months before marrying in a simple ceremony at the Double G. Sarah sold her ranch and moved to the Double G, fitting into the family as if she had always been there. The ranch prospered under the combined efforts of Owen, Thomas, Peter, and Samuel. The herd grew to 600 head, and their horses gained a reputation throughout the territory. Owen built the bigger house he had dreamed of, a sprawling structure with room for everyone. Juliet's informal school expanded, and she became known as the finest teacher in the region, her students going on to attend universities back east and making names for themselves. One evening, 7 years after the blizzard that brought them together, Owen and Juliet sat on the porch of their new house, watching the sun set over the land they loved. Oliver was playing in the yard with his sisters, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. Thomas and Sarah sat nearby, Sarah knitting while Thomas whittled a toy horse for Emma. "Did you ever imagine this?" Juliet asked, leaning against Owen's shoulder. "When you pulled me from that snow, did you imagine we would build all of this?" "I imagined you surviving," Owen said honestly. "Beyond that, I did not let myself hope for too much. But this, all of this, is beyond my wildest dreams. You have given me more than I ever thought possible." "We gave it to each other," Juliet corrected. "I was lost before I found you, Owen. That blizzard brought me exactly where I needed to be." "To my lonely ranch," Owen said, smiling. "Not lonely anymore," Juliet observed. "Now it is full of life and love and purpose. We did that together." "Yes, we did," Owen agreed, pulling her close. "And I would not change a single thing." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to emerge, painting the sky with their ancient light, Owen thought about the path that had led him here. The loneliness he had endured, the blizzard that nearly claimed Juliet, the chance meeting that became a lifetime of love. It had not been easy, but nothing worth having ever was. He looked around at his family, at the land that sustained them, at the life they had carved from harsh wilderness through determination and love. Oliver was teaching his sisters how to whistle, their attempts producing more spit than sound. Thomas and Sarah were laughing about something, their heads close together in the intimate way of couples who truly understood each other. The ranch hands were finishing evening chores, calling goodbyes as they headed to the bunkhouse. This was home. This was love. This was everything. "What are you thinking?" Juliet asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest man alive," Owen said. "And I am thinking that I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you even more tomorrow." "That is mathematically impossible," Juliet teased, the teacher in her emerging. "Love cannot increase infinitely." "Mine can," Owen insisted. "I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you." "I accept that challenge," Juliet said, turning to kiss him properly. After 7 years, his kisses still made her heart race, still made her feel like the girl who had stumbled out of a blizzard and into her destiny. The children groaned at their parents' display of affection, and Thomas called out, "Get a room, you two." "We have several now," Owen called back, grinning. "Perks of prosperity." As darkness fully descended, and the family began moving inside for dinner, Owen took one last look at the Wyoming sky, at the stars that had witnessed his transformation from lonely rancher to husband, father, and patriarch of a thriving family. He thought of his parents, long gone, and hoped they could see what he had built on the foundation they had laid. He thought of the blizzard, that terrible storm that had nearly killed Juliet, but instead had delivered her to his door like a gift from heaven. He thought of all the choices, large and small, that had led to this moment. The decision to check his porch that day, the rope that guided him back through the snow, the courage it took for both of them to admit their feelings and commit to a future together. Life on the Wyoming frontier was hard. It demanded strength, resilience, and an acceptance that nature would always be more powerful than humanity. But it also offered something precious, the chance to build something meaningful with your own hands, to live authentically without pretense, to measure your worth by what you contributed rather than what you possessed. Owen had found all of that and more. He had found love in the last place he expected, had built a family that would carry his legacy forward long after he was gone. The ranch would endure, he knew, because it was built on more than just land and cattle. It was built on love, on sacrifice, on the willingness to face hardship together and emerge stronger. "Owen, dinner is ready," Juliet called from inside. "Coming," he replied, taking one last breath of clean Wyoming air before heading inside to join his family. The years continued their steady march. Oliver grew into a strong young man, tall and broad-shouldered like his father, with his mother's quick mind and insatiable curiosity. He attended university in Cheyenne for 2 years, studying animal husbandry and business, but always knew he would return to the ranch. When he did, at age 20, he brought with him new ideas and innovations that pushed the Double G to even greater success. Emma and Grace became accomplished horsewomen, known throughout the territory for their skill and daring. Emma had her mother's gift for teaching and eventually took over Juliet's school when chronic arthritis made it difficult for Juliet to manage. Grace, more adventurous, became a veterinarian, one of the first women in Wyoming to achieve such a distinction. Both married good men who understood that marrying a Garrett daughter meant becoming part of something larger than themselves. Thomas and Sarah had 3 children of their own, expanding the family further. The Double G became known not just as a ranch but as a community, a place where people came together to help each other through the inevitable hardships of frontier life. When drought struck, they shared water resources. When rustlers threatened, they banded together for protection. When celebration was called for, everyone gathered at the Double G for feasts and dances that lasted long into the night. Owen's hair turned gray, then white, but his step remained sure and his mind sharp. Juliet aged gracefully beside him, her beauty maturing into something deeper and more profound than mere physical appearance. They were partners in every sense, sharing decisions, shouldering burdens, celebrating victories. The love between them never dimmed, never became routine or taken for granted. Every day, Owen still thanked whatever powers had guided Juliet to his door. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Juliet with a trip to Denver, the biggest city either of them had visited in years. They stayed in a fancy hotel, ate at restaurants with white tablecloths, and saw a theatrical production that left Juliet breathless with wonder. But they both agreed that nothing compared to watching sunsets from their porch, surrounded by family. "We have had a good life," Juliet said on their last night in Denver, lying in the unfamiliar hotel bed. "The best life," Owen agreed, "though I am ready to go home." "Me too," Juliet admitted. "This has been wonderful, but home is where my heart is." "Home is you and the ranch and the family we built." They returned to the Double G to find everything running smoothly in their absence. Oliver had managed beautifully, confirming what Owen already knew. His son was ready to take over when the time came. That time was approaching. Owen could feel it in his bones, and surprisingly, he was at peace with it. He had built something that would outlast him, had raised children who would carry his values forward. What more could a man ask for? Thomas passed away first, suddenly and without warning, collapsing in the barn at age 62. He died doing what he loved, working the land he had come home to, and Owen took comfort in that even as his heart broke. Sarah grieved deeply but remained at the ranch, her children and grandchildren needing her strength. Owen himself reached the age of 75, remarkable for the time and place, and he credited his longevity to good genes, hard work, and the love of a remarkable woman. His body had slowed, but his mind remained sharp, and he spent his days advising Oliver on ranch matters and playing with his ever-growing collection of grandchildren. One evening in late summer, as the sun painted the sky in those impossibly beautiful colors unique to Wyoming, Owen and Juliet sat in their favorite spot on the porch. The house behind them hummed with life, children laughing, adults talking, dinner being prepared. The land stretched before them, golden in the fading light, dotted with grazing cattle bearing the Double G brand. "You have any regrets?" Owen asked, holding Juliet's aged hand in his own. Juliet considered the question seriously, as she always did. "None," she said finally. "Well, perhaps one small one. I wish I could have thanked Mr. Henderson properly. He died trying to save me, and because of his sacrifice I found you and this life. I wish he could have known his death was not in vain." "He knows," Owen said with certainty. "Wherever he is, he knows." "How could he not? You took the life he helped save and made it extraordinary. You educated hundreds of children, built a family, made this ranch and this community better. That is the finest memorial anyone could have." "I suppose you are right," Juliet said, squeezing his hand. "What about you?" "Regrets? Not a single one," Owen said firmly. "From the moment I pulled you from that snow, my life became exactly what it was meant to be. Every choice I made led me to you and you to me. The blizzard seemed like a curse at the time, but it was actually the greatest blessing I ever received." "I love you, Owen Garrett," Juliet said, as she had said thousands of times over their decades together. "I will love you forever." "And I love you, Juliet Garrett," Owen replied, "in this life and whatever comes after." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, those same stars that had shone down on Owen's lonely ranch all those years ago. But the ranch was not lonely anymore. It was alive with love and laughter, with purpose and legacy. Owen had spent his life tending the land, but in truth, love had been his greatest crop, and it had flourished beyond his wildest imaginings. As the evening deepened and the family began calling them inside for dinner, Owen helped Juliet to her feet. They moved slowly now, bodies worn by decades of hard living, but they moved together as they always had. Behind them, the house glowed with warm light, windows like beacons calling them home. Owen paused at the threshold and looked back one more time at the land he loved, at the empire of love and family he and Juliet had built from nothing but determination and faith in each other. The blizzard that had brought them together was long past, but its effects rippled forward through time, through children and grandchildren, through the countless lives they had touched and improved. "Ready?" Juliet asked, squeezing his hand. "Always," Owen said, and together, they stepped inside to join their family, closing the door on another perfect day in a life filled with them. The story of Owen and Juliet became legend in that part of Wyoming, passed down through generations as proof that love could bloom even in the harshest conditions, that two people from completely different worlds could build something beautiful together. Their descendants still run the Double G Ranch more than a century later, still guided by the values Owen and Juliet instilled: hard work, integrity, community, and above all, love. When Owen finally passed at age 82, Juliet was holding his hand, as she had held it through decades of joy and hardship. He died peacefully, a smile on his weathered face, surrounded by the family that was his greatest achievement. Juliet followed him just 6 months later, her body finally giving out but her spirit ready to reunite with her beloved husband. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their graves marked by simple stones that bore their names, dates, and a single line. The blizzard brought them together. Love kept them forever. Every generation of Garretts since has made the pilgrimage to that hill, telling their children about the great-great-grandparents who turned a lonely ranch into a haven of love. The story serves as a reminder that life's greatest blessings often come disguised as challenges, that what seems like disaster can actually be deliverance. Owen could have ignored those cries in the storm, stayed safe and warm inside his cabin. Juliet could have given up when the cold became unbearable, let herself surrender to the white oblivion. But they both kept fighting, kept pushing forward, and fate rewarded their courage with a love that transcended time. In the quiet moments, when the Wyoming wind whispers through the grass and the stars shine bright overhead, some say you can still feel their presence on that hill. Two souls forever intertwined, forever grateful for the blizzard that brought them together and the life they built because of it. The Double G Ranch stands as a testament to their legacy, proof that one woman's courage and one man's kindness could create something that endures. Every calf born, every crop planted, every child raised on that land carries forward the love story that began on a frozen February day when a blizzard sent a lost teacher to a lonely cowboy's door. And in the end, that is what life is about. The connections we make, the love we give and receive, the legacy we leave for those who come after. Owen and Juliet understood this instinctively, living each day with intention and gratitude, never taking for granted the miracle that had brought them together. Their story is not unique in its basic elements. The frontier was full of unexpected romances, of people finding love in unlikely circumstances. But what made Owen and Juliet special was how they honored that love, how they nurtured it through good times and bad, how they built it into something larger than themselves. The blizzard lasted only days, but its impact echoed through generations. One storm, one act of kindness, one moment of courage, and the trajectory of countless lives was forever altered. That is the power of love, the magic of human connection, the proof that even in the harshest landscape, beauty and tenderness can not only survive but thrive. As winter returns each year to the Wyoming plains, bringing snow and cold and hardship, the descendants of Owen and Juliet gather around fires and tell the story of their ancestors. They speak of courage and love, of building something meaningful, of the importance of opening your door when someone cries for help in the storm. And they remember that sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in the fiercest trials, that what seems like an ending can actually be a beginning, and that love, when nurtured with care and commitment, can transform not just individuals but entire communities, entire legacies. The ranch continues, the family thrives, and high on that hill, two simple stones mark the resting place of two extraordinary people who proved that love conquers all, even the harshest Wyoming winter. Their story reminds us that we are never truly alone if we have the courage to reach out to help, to love without reservation or fear. And so, the legacy lives on, passed from generation to generation, a love story for the ages, born in a blizzard and lasting forever.